All right, man. So you passed. Congratulations. Good job.
Yeah, it was brutal, but man, your course and your videos and the book and your test, I mean, all of it put together was what allowed me to get over the hump. So thank you very much for providing that to me.
Yeah, man. That's what we're here for. I really appreciate it. I mean, we had that call to go through flows and stuff, which was really fun because we talked shop a lot, which was fun. So how was you said the exam was tough. What was tough about it, or what was the part that I know everybody says it's tough, so that's like to be expected. But how did you approach it, or give me a little bit more detail, please?
You know, in your the way that you taught your class in the flow from the initiating to the planning to the executing to the monitoring and control and to the close, the way that you have your class organized was absolutely beneficial. Rather than going through the knowledge areas on a horizontal perspective and doing it from a vertical perspective, it allowed for me personally, I was able to look at the questions, and even through the ambiguity of the questions, I was able to say, hey, by the way the question was structured, without even looking at the answers, I was able to say, hey, I'm in the plan scope, or hey, I'm in the risk planning, or hey, I'm in the quality planning. I was able to discern, manage, monitoring, and control. I could tell where I was at in that chart because of the way you taught the class.
That's awesome, dude.
Which
That's
was
awesome.
Absolutely key.
Yeah, that's great. And so, like, when you get there, I'm assuming you said even without looking at the answer. So, were you thinking of the answer might be at this point by the time you got down there, or how were you just saying, okay, I know where I am, and then let me go through the answers? How are you kind of walking through it?
Well, no, I looked at the questions and said, hey, okay, I'm in the integrated change control. I can tell by the question I'm in integrated change control, and they're asking, hey, I've already done the quality check. I'm doing a validated deliverable. I know what do I have to do next. If I have a validated deliverable, what's next? And then, so from that point, validated deliverable goes into closing. So I knew, okay, I've done this. I know what the next step is. What answer are they looking for? Whether it's a document or whether it's a next process, or hey, what did the project manager forget to do? Which was, so understanding that process, the way that you taught it, absolutely critical.
That's awesome, man. So, I mean, you're a practitioner. You've been doing this for years, project management. And so, what kind of things are you taking back to the job? Anything specific where you're tightening up the game or focusing on younger people to say, focus on these key points? Anything you're taking away, now that you passed the PMP?
Well, I think in a lot of the programs that I've dealt with and a lot of the projects that I've helped to not only develop but also lead, there was a gap in the planning to execution. People always wanted to, and it's very, unfortunately, especially in larger programs, people want to jump the gun and say, well, I've done my scope plan. I don't have a baseline, but I have enough of a scope to go start doing activities. And so now that I've been through all of this without actually doing all three of the baselines, the scope, schedule, and the cost, now I know where, hey, we cannot actually start execution until we have all three baselines because we have to know where we're going, and we have to have starting point. Now, the risk and everything else, it's still critical, don't get me wrong, but those three baselines don't start unless you have those. And that's one of the biggest key takeaways that I took from this.
Yeah, I think that's a really big one. I mean, it's a tough sell. Like, better than I, like a lot of organizations, they want to run, especially when you have like an energetic sponsor. But I do think, let's get it nailed down first so that we don't have to circle back later. We don't have these problems. So I think it can be an impactful lesson for organizations once you bring it back. So I think that's really awesome. Cool.
Well, I think the communication plan part of it also, and I'll expand on this. I think if you take all the knowledge areas in that planning, the 3 baselines absolutely critical.
Yep.
The stakeholder planning and the communication planning. If you don't do the risk, quality, and procurement until afterwards, you're still going to run into problems. Don't get me wrong, but I think, to me, I realized 5 critical pieces.
Yep.
The 3 majors: scope, cost, and schedule, but also communication and stakeholder planning.
Yeah.
Those 5, absolutely critical before you even get to a kickoff meeting.
Oh, totally, 100% agree. It helps you think through the core of the foundation, like, what are we doing here? Help us get aligned with all those 3 baselines you're talking about, and then who are we dealing with? How do we have to work the relationships? Like, what kind of landmines are we walking into? So I think that's a really, really great way to frame it up front, to focus on those 5 hot spots, and then everything else supports. But those are the ones that you can really miss something or screw something up if you don't focus on. So totally on board. Totally on board. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah. How long did you spend total studying, just overall?
Anybody that sees this video probably won't like this answer very much, but total, even from my first failure to going through your class and everything, total of about 40 hours.
That's pretty crazy, right? All right. So, the first.
Sorry.
No, I don't care. I think it's great. I'm telling people they can get through in 7 days. So I'm totally on board, and not even studying all the 7 days. So you did 2. So within 40 hours, working hours, you failed once, you passed once. So, a little bit of time. How much first test did you study? Like, I'm just trying to understand. Like, how many hours?
I read the PMBOK and the book that I showed you in our last conversation. I read both of those books in 3 days.
Okay. So you powered through it, and you just felt good being, hey, I've been through this. I work projects for a living. I feel like I can handle this. That's kind of the philosophy. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think in the first go around, I had a good connection with the material.
Yeah.
Okay. I won't discount any of the material that I read.
Yep.
But the way that I work and knowing how the programs are built, I think that in the first round it was like we had discussed, horizontal learning.
Yeah.
As opposed to the way that I know how to run and develop programs is in a vertical, the way that you teach.
Yep.
And I think the way that your program is set up is actually the best way to learn, because that's how we as practitioners actually not only initiate, but also all the way through and close programs.
Yeah.
So if you're not learning in a vertical and you're trying to learn it in a horizontal, there are so many different pieces that you're going to miss. And especially whenever we went through that flow conversation, all the intricates, and talking about quality and how everything flows back into the manage communications and all the entry points and exit points, you don't learn that from horizontal learning. You learn that from vertical learning, like your program teaches.
Yeah, totally. I think the thing that's really awesome is I have I have multiple conversations a week with students, and they're all different levels. And when we get into your conversations, it's like, we get to talk about like wild connections that don't exist in like normal people's. They're like, it goes to this and it goes to this and it goes to this. And I'm like, oh, cool. You got the flow. But then you're talking, we were talking about how all these real things exist, because in that integration up at the top, it really is pulling in all of these things, and you can, everything affects the other. But I think once you have that up and down perspective and you understand the flows and you layer on your expertise and your experience, it gets really exciting and fun, and you start to appreciate the art of what you do every day. That's not just cookie cutter. I can follow a process. So it's got a.
Well, there's one piece of that integration that's in the business case and the business management plan, and it really. And I think as I was going through your program and really concentrating on the integration on the initiating phase, I actually identified one piece that's actually missing out of that.
Nice. Lay it on us. What is it?
I think, and I'm gonna I'm not going to promote the book, but you've seen this before.
Yeah, promote it. Strategy maps. Yeah, I've seen it before.
Okay,
Yeah.
this book right here, and actually the whole series. There's 4 of these in this series, but I think in order for you to get to a business case, in order for you to, before you even get to a business case, or before you even get to a charter, you've got to have this straight. Okay, and your project or your program, if you don't have your strategy, your maps built to map out your program, then I can see where people would be having issues building a business case and building a charter because they have and I know that the PIN box says use expert judgment and use your other stakeholders and outside influences and everything else, but those people don't know what's in the C-level's head. Okay. They don't know what's in the vice president's head. They don't know what's in the CFO's head or the sponsor's head. That strategy map takes all that knowledge out of their head, puts it into a framework that says, this is what we want to achieve. This is my North Star on my project. Build me something, a business case, a business management plan, and a charter that achieves this.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think that in organizations, I know you've seen it, I've seen it, that running projects is great. Like having projects go, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee organizational success, because you could have 1,000 projects go and shoot. But if like, I'd rather have 4 going dead on bullseye, or at least where we want the guys to go, you know, to be more effective. So strategy maps or Hoshi Conry or strategy deployment, whatever methodology I think you're getting at is that top-down alignment so that the project manager can know what they're doing correctly. Otherwise, we're getting mixed messages and lack of, you know, buy-in and lack of commitment and those kind of things. It's just not good.
Well, I think that there was one part of the exam, and even in your, I think it was in your final exam, it may have been in the 200 question practice exam before the final. There was a series of questions that asked, you know, in essence, hey, you can't get your stakeholders aligned, or hey, you've got, you know, in a couple of the scenario questions, it was like, hey, your stakeholders were on board and all excited at the beginning, and now 9 months later they fell off the wagon and they could care less about your program and turned hostile. How do you get them back? You know, and it's a very common problem. But if you have, to my point and to your point, if you have a strategy map that initiated the business case, that initiates the project charter, then you can take that strategy map, set it down on that stakeholder's desk and say, you don't support this, but your CEO does, because this is his North Star.
100%. Yeah, that drives them toward it. So that you bring the heavy stick of the CEO with you everywhere you're going to say, hey, we're all just serving the big guy or girl. Like, that's what we're doing here. So 100% on board. And I mean, that other problem about like you're working a project for 9 months and nobody's on board. The cool thing about these questions is you can dive into what are we doing in the communication and engagement? Why have we not talked to people in 9 months? Like, what is going on here? Like, we got deeper problems there. Like, but you're right. If it doesn't support the big picture, I mean, that's gonna cascade into a lot of things. Like, there's gonna be competing projects. You're probably gonna have more projects than you need. Like, I don't know how many organizations we've gone into where we start out and we say, what do you got going? And the list is longer than their leg. And that's not even all the projects that are running. And it's like, our first job is to cut half the thing, unfortunately, and just see where we're actually going here. So,
yeah. Well, you bring up a good point there, because again, I've walked into customers before and had that same conversation with them, and they give out this spreadsheet that's, you know, 20 pages long and say, here's all the projects and initiatives that we have going on, and you look at them and you go, well, that's fine, that's great, but let's take a look at your strategy map. Let's take a look at your strategy and see what actually aligns to your North Star, and to your point, start chopping. And if you don't have something, if you have a gap, then let's help you define something that will fill that gap, or that will help you achieve what it is you think these other ones are going to that are not going to. So absolutely.
Well, I think this might be like a cautionary tale that, like, so for some PMs that are, they're younger or middle management or whatever, and they go off and get their PMP, I think they probably are raring to go. They want to go back and work projects and prove that they can fill out a charter and, monitor things and do change requests and do all that stuff. Yeah, it's fun. But I think the company would be better served. I gotta be careful how I say this. The company might be better served a little bit by saying, asking why we're doing this project. Like, you gotta be careful, because you're not going to try to take over the organization at that point. If they're not ready for strategy deployment or strategy maps or anything, you got to play the long game and show them short things, and then maybe say, hey, I think that this project serves this, and move forward. But sometimes to better understand that, at least can get them in the right mode, like trying to lead from the bottom up. You still got to work the project, but pushing back a teensy bit and understanding, I think, could be a beneficial exercise, I think, possibly.
Well, I don't think that the PMP, I think you just hit on something that's very, very important to me.
Yeah.
Okay. And not only as a leader, but also as a practitioner, that, man, I've had technical certifications. I've had the IEs, the Cs and the Js, and, the IEs and F5s and everything else in my career.
Right.
And just because you have a certification and it says, hey, you've got a base knowledge.
Yep.
And you were able to go past this exam with that base knowledge, and you should be able to perform at a certain level. Okay,
right.
That's what a certification is. At least that's my definition of them. However, let's not mix certification with reality.
Mm-hmm.
This thing teaches you the foundational knowledge of what PMBOK is, and
right.
says, yes, you have the knowledge, but it does not give you the experience to actually go out and do a business analysis, to do a business case, or to build a project charter, or to build a communication plan or anything else. There's no examples in there that says, in the exam that says, hey, write me a communications plan that's less than 500 words.
Yeah. Yeah, they get your point across. They, deals with those. And I mean, I think these things dead on. And so I always think about, like, when we go through the charter, they call about what's in it. Great. That's awesome. But when I have the charters and things, the thing that I find most useful is the Nimawashe, or whatever you want to call it in the lean world, where we're pitching it around to people, not only just to get their opinions, but you are having the opportunity to, in a sense, show respect and bring them in and have an opportunity to show your judo skills in a little bit of, like, getting them aligned to you before we start. So it's not just like, I got a charter, the big guy signed it, let's go forth. It's almost like I'm building an army the entire time, or at least trying to, or at least knowing who's going to stab me in the back, like, or trying to figure it out from the beginning. So I think that you're right. There's tons of art to it. And I don't want people to be scared to go out and go, like, oh God, like, I don't want to, I don't know the art yet. But I think the only way you learn the art is to start painting some ugly paintings. Yeah.
Well, in project or project management and program management, and I went through, in my undergrad classes, I went through two semesters of project management classes. One was project management, one was program management, and they were very different. But I think one of the things that people miss is being project or program managers, or even portfolio managers for that matter, especially if they've been in an enterprise environment for a really, really long time. And I would say they're kind of at the director level, not quite in the executive VP and up level. There is a certain amount of consulting experience that comes with being not an effective project or program manager, but a great project or program manager. And you have to have some level of consulting skills to go along with the PMP technical functionality, to your point, because communication skills, I mean, all of the stuff that's in there, all of those 49 processes that are in the PMBOK. The number one process that will kill your program is the managed communication. Don't care how good you are at the other 49 or the other 48. If you don't have managed communications down, you're toast. And that comes with consulting skills.
Absolutely. So I love, so I'm going to ask you like a vague general question, but if you had to put a person in an environment that would build those skills, what kind of environment would you take young project manager and throw them in where they would be forced to build those skills? What would the environment look like to you?
From a project perspective or from an organizational perspective? Or
let's start with either one. Take whichever one you feel more confident about or faster.
Okay, well, I'll take the organizational one first.
Yeah.
Okay. I would pick, and I know this is going to sound counterintuitive, but I would pick the biggest, baddest, hairiest, dirtiest customer that I've got and put somebody that's fresh off the boat, PMP or project managers, and I would throw them into a project that had maybe into one of those types of customers that had about a 12-week duration that they had to deliver very quickly on.
Yeah.
Because if you can do that in 12 weeks with that kind of a customer, imagine what you could do on a more milder customer where you've got 6 months, 12 months, 2 years to do something. So that's from an organizational perspective. That would be, it's not throwing them the sheep to the lions. It's exposing them to what can really, really happen out of the gate. And if you don't scare them off in that 12 weeks, then you've got someone you can work with. But if they get frazzled or stressed or say they can't do it, then you know that you probably have somebody that doesn't quite fit the mold of a project manager.
Dead on.
Technically, I would do the same thing from a technical perspective. I would hand somebody fresh off the boat. I would pair them with a team of highly skilled architects or engineers, so that they don't have to be the experts in the technical side, but they do have to know how to manage. So, and being able to go into there from a technical perspective with a seasoned team to help them manage the technical aspects of it while the project manager handles the PMP side of it. I think that's where I would separate the two of them, and that's how I would actually put the people into the right organizations or the right projects.
I love it, man. I agree 100%. I think that doing it that way, and I concur with your things. I think that like tough organizations where you're not in a projectized type of environment where you have to go into either if you're like an internal, consultant in a sense, or an external consultant where you have to go into someone else who's working a full-time job, doing all this stuff, seeing the ups and downs, and you have to find a way to make it work for them is like the best way to, you don't even realize it when you're in there, but when you come out, you go to some place where the dice are set up or everything's set up for you. You're like you'll take meetings with me. You'll give me time. Like you're okay with what I'm like, oh gosh, like I didn't even realize that the world could be this way. So I love that, throwing them into the tough spots. Yeah, I think it's really great.
Well, I mean, that's where you kind of weed out because I mean, again, a resume is only a door opener.
Yep.
And interview skills are a snapshot in time.
Yep.
And and I don't have a problem doing interviews. I don't have a problem giving people references. But let's face it. There's a reason, unless your job was reduced or workforce reduction due to strategic realignments like mine was, most people are leaving their jobs because they're either running from something or they're trying to run to something, okay? Yeah. Whatever that something is. Yeah. And for some people, they're leaving their jobs because they were booted out of the door or ran out or pushed out the door. And so when you go and do reference checks and and if you're calling somebody and someone's being brutally honest with you, it's kind of a breath of fresh air. But for the most part, they say, oh yeah, the person was great, they did all their work, blah blah blah. Well, then you find out a month later why they left their other job, and you've got them on a $50 million contract that you can't take them off of. So
agreed.
That's why I say throw them to the baddest, worst program that you can for a short duration, for a short phase, to see how they handle themselves and the customer and how they react, and see if they can cut it. And if they can't, then you can move on from them.
I think that's a great way. I love the question. I don't know if it's legal or not, but what are you running from or what are you running toward is a good one. Because, I mean,
I've actually been asked that question.
What was your answer?
I said, the only thing I'm running from is no opportunities, and I'm running to my career goals.
That seems fair. That seems fair. And I think it'll flush out pretty quickly. Somebody, first of all, can think on their feet that gets asked, an abrupt question that, I mean, you can get very specific on your answer, or they could chase all around the day, and you might know how they're going to deal with a tough client and how they're going to deal with, that CEO that's going to put them on the spot right there and see, just test them to see what they got if their time's.
Oh, that question's perfectly legal, by the way, if you ever want to use it. There's
I
nothing
will use
illegal
it
about it.
pretty much all the time now. So, yeah, so that's good. I think that's great, man. So cool. As you sum it up, like you only spent 40 hours, so not that much. So how much time did you spend doing my stuff? Like, I know we talked a little bit, we were on the phone for an hour or so, but other than that, how much time did you spend with our stuff?
I spent about half that time, 20 hours with your stuff.
That's not so bad.
Yeah. So your videos, I went through all of your videos, but I'll be honest with you, I cheated a little bit.
That's all right.
If I could show you what I did, you'd probably be flabbergasted with me. But I took your ebook.
Yep.
Okay. I read your ebook. And then I also have a hard copy of your book back here.
You got to start again. You broke up. You said I took the ebook. You broke up after that. Start again with the ebook.
I took the ebook.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I actually rewrote each one of the sections and the monitoring and control, because as we know, that's what caused me not to make it my first time.
Yep.
So that's where I concentrated first. And I took that whole monitoring and control chapter that you had, and I rewrote every one of the sections in my own words.
Dude.
And then I went back and watched your videos on each one of them. And as I saw what I was doing wrong and what I had gotten wrong in the first exam, I saw where my weakness was in the exam just by doing that. And so, and I ended up doing that same process through, because quality and risk, it still kicked my butt. I'll be honest with you. It did, but I mean, I made it. I think that I actually did better with the quality and the risk on the second time, but I actually did that with the rest of it also. So I've got about 500 pages worth of notes that I basically transcribed your book into my own language, into my own words, and using your videos, and it made all the difference.
I think that is a really, really powerful thing that you did. It cuts way amount of time out of it, because you and I talked about it. The way I wrote my book was taking the PMBOK, making it in my words, and simplify so that I could talk it through in my mind. So that's how we got that book. And I love the fact that you took the book and got it down in yours. So, if anybody's out there, like getting it in your own words, taking the time to slow down and go, I mean, to do that, in my opinion, takes a certain amount of, it takes a lot of chutzpah, like stick-to-itiveness, and a little bit of like humbleness, because I imagine did the words just flow out of you, or did you have to find some of the words that were your words to explain things to yourself? Like, what was that process like?
For the most part, they flowed.
Okay.
There was a couple of points whenever I got into some of the documents that I wasn't aware of, whenever, some of the IDO stuff, it says document analysis. It's like, pardon my French here, but what the hell, which document?
What do you mean?
So whenever I ran into something that I did not know, I understood it from the book, I understood it from your videos, but when I got to that point in my own notes, I put those words that I did not understand, or those areas that I didn't understand all that well, into red. I highlighted them in red ink, so that when I went back through them again, I knew that, hey, you need to go look for something that explains what this is.
Beautiful.
In the context of where you're at in this process flow.
That's a good one.
That's how I got through it.
Yeah, I think that's great. So distilling it down, get in your own words. I mean, that's essentially you're teaching yourself at that point. You're taking the content in a way so that you could teach yourself, get it down on paper, if through your fingers or out of your mouth, whatever way is the easiest. I think that is the way that people really nail it down. I mean, I have been like super happy this week. Happy usually, but at 7:30 in the morning, I start a Zoom call for 4 students of mine so that they can go and teach each other stuff, because they were like, I feel like I need extra help and stuff. And these people came together, they got a little study group. So they're doing the same thing of like teaching each other the concepts. And then I'm on the other ear, just like while I'm doing basic stuff in the morning, jumping in occasionally. But yeah, that's a really, really effective technique, I think, to go through and distill it for yourself. That's awesome. So.
Yeah, I think some of the questions that were being shown yesterday on the chat box on the website, there was one gentleman that was showing some screenshots, and he couldn't understand why the answers were what they were. But as soon as I saw what he was asking, the question, I recognized the question, and I knew what the answer was before, without even looking down. But he was asking, he didn't understand why that was the answer. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give to any of your students that are in your class, that are going through all the exams, the knowledge area exams, the class exams, and your exam simulator and stuff, is don't memorize the question.
Yeah.
Look at the question. To your point that you made in one of your videos, look at the question and ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Why? How, and what was before this, what is after this in the flow.
Yeah.
And I think the individual that posted the video, the question, if he would have looked at the question and understood the why of the question, he would have understood the why of the answer.
Ah, there we go. Yeah, because the normal, I love that. And the normal perspective I think a lot of students have when they're in a fast pace, and I think they're kind of fearful of missing questions. I think I'm interpreting, and I don't mean to put, me interpret what their actual motivations are, but it seems as though they're trying to, when they miss it, they're trying to invalidate the question in general. Now, occasionally questions are wrong. All right. Like, I don't like some of the PMI questions, whatever, but most of them I do. They take the normal first reaction as, I got it wrong, therefore the question must be wrong. And let me work my brain and talk myself into doing that. And I go, okay, that's an okay logic, but I don't think that's the first way to do. I think if you step back and go, all right, maybe I missed something in the why behind the question and the structure, and let me work through it. And then, like the people on the side, I think walked him through. I didn't get involved in that one, but they walked him through and said, oh, now I see it's not a wrong question or whatever. Like, it's actually, I wasn't seeing the layers behind this thing. So I think that's a good way.
Well, I can tell you where I think you hit on a very critical point, okay? Because I kept an eye on that chat box as I was going through the test and through your videos and stuff.
Yeah.
And there was one gentleman, I guess it was maybe last week, that said, hey, he failed the second time and he was giving up.
Yeah.
Okay. I do remember that, but then a little bit further down that conversation, if I remember correctly, he said something on the chat window that I thought was very, very systemic of people that think this exam is easy.
Yep.
Okay. He said that he was talking to a friend of his that said, hey, if you can go take the Microsoft Certified Engineer exam and pass that, you can pass the PMBOK or the PMP exam. Okay.
Maybe.
Well,
I mean, you got a brain. Go ahead.
Well, let me tell you how most of these people pass those exams. Okay. They use brain dumps, and in your video, no brain dumps. Okay. They will literally go out there and scour the internet and find the exams and find questions that are essentially the exact same questions that are on these exams, and they will memorize those questions and memorize those answers.
Yep.
And so when they get to this exam, they think that, hey, Scott's got this great simulator. He's got 1,400 questions. All I've got to do is memorize the questions.
Yeah.
And I can go past this because they're already in that technical certification mentality.
Yeah.
They've already got those technical certifications, not realizing that this is not a technical certification. This is you better know your stuff before you go in there. This is a process, and this is a business and a process-oriented certification, not a technical certification.
Absolutely.
And it's a lot deeper than just saying, hey, I need to configure an IP address. What are the commands?
Yeah, that is a dead on one. So it's those are great conversations to have. It's hard to break through. I mean, those are the one-offs because we have simulator people all in, people all these different coming in different directions. So we're trying to herd them all into like, hey, no memorization. It's not tricks, and we got to focus on the why, and we got to talk about things behind here and the systems and everything. Yeah, I think you hit on a good one. That, I mean, I don't know how many times during the week I'll get an email that says, how many questions do you have? Can I take them all at once? And I go, 1,403-ish. We're adding more all the time. You can take them all in a row, but I would much rather you take 100 and only study 100, but study them really hard and like make a doctoral thesis out of each one of them and be able to talk through it. Because a lot of these guys come on, I love them all. Like, we're here to help everybody in the world. Like, but they come on, they say, look at what I can do. I can memorize all these zeros. Awesome. Can you tell me about blah? Like, and then they go like, well, it's an input here. Okay, I understand that. Like, I can look it up too. Like, tell me why you use it. Like, what problem does it solve? Is it a fork or a knife? Like, what's going on here? And so I think that like you've proven good knowledge you start with. You didn't overwhelm yourself with like reading or memorizing anything. You didn't take a jillion of questions because you only studied for 20 hours. Like, questions take time to go through. I mean, that's science.
Sorry.
And it doesn't matter to me. Like, you proved that if you can get the logic in your head, that's the goal. Because you're going to get questioned on the logic in the exam, situation logic, whatever you want to call it. But that's, however you get there, that's the get there that we have to go to. So,
yeah, the logic, understanding the logic of the PMBOK chart in the vertical sense, not in the horizontal, but in the vertical sense, and knowing the logic behind it, and of those 32 documents, which documents fit into that logic in certain places, because as we both know, they fit all over the place, but you have to kind of know what feeds into work information, what feeds into work data, what feeds into work information, what feeds into work reports. And so if you're able to put the logic in the flows of the chart, if you're able to understand that logic and then overlay that with the documents at each point in that logic, you put those two pieces together and you truly are able to understand the questions that they're asking and the why of the questions that they are asking, then you're on your way to passing that exam.
Yeah, because it's not about like, hey, I got 20 hours. You can be done in 20 hours if you just memorize 20 hours of the questions and you drink 1,000 cups of coffee. What you just said is how you get to 20 hours, because you are equipping yourself with this like infrastructure, this system that you put it in there, and you can analyze the question. And I think confidence comes through that kind of study. Like you're not the one that's like scared that I'm going to face something I've never seen before. Like when you start memorizing, you're like, I got to memorize everything because I got to be able to pull it back in my brain. Nah, don't even worry about it. Like just know the logic.
I think if some of those people that were on the chat window would actually heed your advice on the exam, taking the exams, your video series where you're saying this is how you can pass this exam and this is what you can do, and even on that 58 question video that you did, where you walk through each one of those 58 questions and the logic of those questions. I think you did a fantastic job on that video. I actually learned a few things out of that video because of the structure. Because you also have that video where you talk about, hey, these are the types of questions, and this is how they're structured, and this is the examples of them. Me personally, if the people that are using your program have not studied, I mean, I'm not talking about just turn it on and listen to it. I'm talking about actually pay attention to it, because I did the same thing to those videos as I did with the book and wrote notes off of it. If they actually take your video and understand what your video said, hey, these are the questions, these are the formats, and take that, write it into their own words, take that document and as they're going through all those practice exams and look at that document and say, okay, this is the format of this type, this question is this kind of format, this is the how and the why of that question, and start looking at it from a logical perspective. And to your point, don't memorize it.
Yeah.
Understand the logic of what they're doing. It makes it a lot easier, a lot less stressful.
I agree 100%. And like people say, hey, well, I've already seen this question. I don't want to look at it again. I go, okay, so you can teach this question. You can tell me why each answer is not right and wrong. You can tell me like detailed why this is better than that answer, where it comes from, what situation would exist for the second answer to be right versus the other one. Like, that's why, I mean, I do questions. I'm going on at 8:30 tonight for 2 hours on questions that I've done for, 200 I've done over the past 6 weeks, and I'm going to do for the next 16 weeks. Like, all the questions I'm constantly learning and throwing people into the situation to be like, yeah, you got it right, but why did you get it right? Like, it's deep. And I think that's the thing with, you can work good projects, to go back to regular thing, and get lucky and do things well, and you have a great team, and the world's behind you, the wind's at your back. But like, if you can't look at yourself and be like, I was bad in this area, or I can really tighten up here, or this is what really, really, really worked well, and I can see this pattern in a person that I can better identify next. I mean, it never stops. And so I think it's just a corollary, or whatever you call it, a pattern for regular life. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that I think your program, I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it, because I'll be a huge promoter of your program moving forward.
Cool.
But I think that you have a very logical structure to your program. Okay, the way that you've got it laid out. But the people that are in your program, if they are there, like we've talked about, if they are there to memorize questions and not understand the logic of the question, the hows and the whys and the meanings, not only of the question, but why something is right, why something is wrong, then they are completely missing out on what it means to be a PMP.
I agree 100%. If you're looking for just like, I can reproduce some kind of factual knowledge to get through a hurdle and then I'll forget about it forever. That's why, I mean, I heard a while ago at one of these PMI conferences, like somebody asked me what I do, and I told them, and then they said, the PMP, what a terrible experience. Like, I would never want to do that again. And I go, yeah, that's terrible that you were forced to be put in that situation. But what if we did something different? What if it was an actual experience that helped you sharpen your saw, get perspective, get resolve, and kind of catapulted you up? Wouldn't that be better? And I think there is an opportunity, like 2 pills or whatever you want to take. I think people can make a change right now. And it's kind of fun because you get to have conversations like, I mean, I enjoy your and my conversations where we talk about programs and projects and stuff like that, and strategy maps and stuff like, like that's fun stuff that we're preparing ourselves for the next war. And so I think it's fun. So I appreciate it, man. So.
Well, I would like to see, I know that the PMI is coming out with a new structure next year. I think they were supposed to have come out with it this year, but because of the COVID thing, that they pressed it till next year. I think that's what I saw back in February or January, February timeframe. Because they're supposed to be adding, I think even you made mention of it on some of your videos, that they're putting a lot more of the agile stuff into the next round of the PMP certification. Me personally, I would love for them to bring, and they may already have this with the business analyst piece certification that they have, but I would love for them to bring more of the pre-work before initiation into the knowledge area, because this only touches, hey, get the project like we talked about early.
Hey, get it charted.
Get the charter, go to work.
Yeah.
You and I know from our experiences in the real world that that's not the way that it works.
No.
There is probably a good year, maybe 2 or 3 years worth of work up front before you even get to that charter that really has an impact whether or not that charter and that project is going to be successful or not.
Oh, without a
And,
doubt.
and having that knowledge up front and having that, even if it's at a base level within the PMI, I think that would really enhance the credibility. Not to say that there's anything wrong with the PMP, don't get me wrong, okay? But I think that having a PMP with that base knowledge of knowing how to not only develop but also to read a strategy map and putting that into the context of a project charter, I mean, that's just me.
I agree 100%. I've seen some. I agree with 100%. I've seen the content layout for the new stuff, and I do like it because it's more in the flow like we think and lay out that way. So it'll be interesting how they organize it, and they're going to give a lot of flexibility to guys like me to not change their core content, but to add additional stuff. So we can go wild with case stories and all these different things to teach. Now, oh shoot, my phone started recording. One thing that I really like about what you said about before the charter gets going, I think a missing thing with project managers and engineers in general, like when you get to engineer side, is the selling of a project. And I think that, I don't know much about real estate, but they say all the money's made in the deal. Like in the structure of the arrangements you have with the bank and the price you get and all the stuff, like, yeah, you're going to do the work to fix the house and grow it and all that stuff. And the economy is going to go up and the housing prices are going to go up, but you either make money or you don't make money in the deal. I think so. At least for this metaphor, it's going to work. All right. So what I'm saying is like a lot of times when you have the opportunity to sell a project, because a lot of times people are competing for resources, you can sell the right project at the right thing and build the right, consensus, like tying it to clear things that the organization wants, getting buy-in, getting like buzz going, and being able to maintain that, not overselling, not underselling. Like you can make a lot more, you can set yourself up for more success than just saying, I need a charter, I'm going to go forth. Like, I don't know, from a guy that has to sell projects, like, I think that's true. So.
Well, you actually hit on something that's very, that's near and dear to my heart. Okay. During my time at Dell, I mean, you and I spoke about this in previous conversations where I sold, 20, 30, $40 million programs.
Yeah.
And being there from the very first executive conversation all the way through the signature on the deal and leading those programs and having, multiple teams reporting up and blah, 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 doing all the things that the PMP teaches you, but having all that pre-PMP knowledge and experience. There toward the end of my time at Dell, we actually started getting program managers, not project managers, but program managers. We actually started getting them into the deals. So that they were there in the conversation, so that they were there when the scopes were written, when the charters were written, to get them to make sure that their alignment to the program was spot on when the deals were signed and the planning started. So because what we found out, and I think that this is what a lot of people find out, and to your point, you go sell a project and get a charter signed, and then you throw somebody in at cold feet. You're going to spend the first month or two just in the forming and storming stage of Tucker's ladder.
Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah, and I mean, projects die. Like in reality, they hint on it in PMI. If a project is closed for whatever reason, we still go through all this other stuff. I mean, the light stops shining on certain projects where the people just pull your funding, and it's not a fun place to be, but it happens. So the better you can sell at the beginning and stick with it, keep that.
That's where the alignment. That's where if you can. I've been a part of. You and I both. Many of us that are out there in the world in our positions have been a part of those programs. Yeah. But this is where I think that, again, going back to the strategy maps, if you have something that's a North Star of a 3 to 5 year roadmap, and you are consistently delivering results against that roadmap, and in your program, then the chances of you getting caught in a dead end project or program are going to be pretty nil.
Right.
But it takes the experience. It takes the the fortitude to be able to stay in there and to, you know, the conviction actually to stand in there and say, hey, you want to, Mr. Customer, you want to cancel this program. But let me hold up your strategy map for you and say, remind you what your North Star is and what we're actually shooting toward. You know, and then if the CFO says, well, you know, you're right, but we don't have the funds, can we at least put it on hold? Okay. Okay, how about we put the program on hold, but how about we keep some of the critical change stuff going that won't cost so much, and that way at least you're still moving toward, because as long as you're taking a step forward, you're not taking 2 steps backwards.
Now you're
just selling. My conversation that I have.
I think like now you're negotiating and saving it, and I think these guys and girls at the head of the organization, that's the kind of conversation I believe they respect. Are you going to roll over on your project, or are you going to really believe with conviction that this thing is the cat's meow and we did it for a reason? And at the end of the day, like some of the younger guys, I try to tell them, like, the mistake that I made when I was young is that I believe project management was about me, how smart I was, and that I could lead these people and blah, 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 until I realized that the project management has literally nothing to do with me. It is me facilitating the needs of the people that I work for. In a way, then I started to say, oh shit, I've been doing things wrong for a long time. Like, my ego has been feeling good, but I've been a bad guy. So,
Servant leadership.
Yeah, that's it. And you know, so, all right, man, we could go all night. I want to do this again. We'll do another call that's more just like project talk or something like that, where we just talk through stuff like that. I think would be fun.
Okay.
That'd be cool. So a lot of the stuff that I took from you, man, like, first of all, you can do this thing pretty quickly. You just got to come at it with the right way. And then you have to be committed. This is what I'm learning from your conversation. You have to be committed to follow through and really I'm not going to say teach yourself, but put it in your own words. Have the tenacity and the commitment to put it in your own words so that you can, not memorize anything. You can really just have a good structure to lean on. So you did that. You were successful. I think if people follow your example, they're going to be right along with it. And I'm glad I can, set them up for success. So appreciate it, man.
Well, I only followed your roadmap.
Well,
because you made the mention of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so that's the goal. I set the roadmap out, I lay it out, give the content, and then you guys go and follow it, interpret it for yourself, put it into practice, and then go in there and kill the exam. So simple as that. Simple as that.
Well, if it hadn't have been for, one last note here, one last comment. If it had not been for what I did, for you telling us to go put this into your own words, into your own language, and your own structure, I didn't find the exam questions any more difficult than I did the first time. I'll be honest, but because I had done what you had recommended to do, I was able to take the questions and put the ones that I maybe not have been quite so sure of into my own context, and then look at the answers and say, you know what, these 4 answers are, any of them can be correct based on the changing of 1 or 2 words in this scenario.
Yeah.
But because of what they're asking, and I was able to put it into my own words, I was able to determine what the right answer was.
Beautiful. That is good.
So
man.
It does help.
That is the right approach. So I'm glad you listened. I'm glad you did it. And you're right. It does work if you think through it that way. So well done. Well done, dude.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with the way you're teaching the class and the material that you have on your website, Scott.
Cool.
I think that based on some of the stuff that I've seen in the chat window, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Either A, people are too nervous, they're too scared.
Yeah.
B, they're trying to rush it too much and trying to memorize the questions. Or C, they're not paying attention to, they've bypassed all the stuff that you did in the beginning, all that great material that you've got in the initiation part of your program.
Yeah.
They haven't even looked at what you're recommending to do, and they're not following your advice. You didn't do that for your own edification. You did that because you know that it works, and you've got testimonies from people like myself and others that have followed your program to show that it works.
Yep.
And if people, to your point, slow down.
Yeah, big one.
You don't have
Big
to
one.
memorize it, but slow down.
Yep, that's a big one, man. All right, Terry, this is good. I appreciate it, man. Congratulations again. You did really, really good. We'll be in touch. Anything I can do to help you, I'm doing it. So just let me know, dude. And we'll be around. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. I appreciate it, Scott.
Yes, sir. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.